Okay, I got asked quite a few different questions at the Elm Tree line regarding size of locomotives in relation to other scales. So this short video just shows comparison between a British 00 gauge model and a 16 mil locomotive running on G-scale track. So the locomotive in the foreground is a British diesel locomotive class 60, the model manufactured by Lima of Italy, who stopped production in 2004, but the model is currently being produced by Hornby Railways in more recent liveries. The locomotive in 00 gauge running on Pico 00 gauge track. HO gauge as used by Continental modelers and across Europe and Americas. Track exactly the same. Locomotive would be just marginally smaller to the HO gauge dimensions. The locomotive in the background is modelled on an Australian Fowler class steam locomotive, narrow gauge locomotive, as opposed to the standard gauge diesel locomotive pictured in the foreground. Manufactured by Roundhouse Engineering of Doncaster, England, and made to 16 mil scale. Available for 32mm gauge track or 45mm gauge G-scale track. The steam locomotive is shown here actually on G-scale track, so you can get a direct comparison as to the size of the 00 gauge track, and also the locomotive, which runs and looks just as happy in a 16mm environment or a G-scale environment. As you can see here, both the diesel locomotive and steam locomotive side by side. There are many instances of people running successfully 00 and HO gauge model railways outdoors, and obviously if you're looking to increase the size of your railway, then obviously 0 gauge or 16mm and G-scale are the next most common sizes that are used in the garden. After that, before you move up to ride-on scale locomotives and railways. So hopefully this short film just gives you a brief introduction if you're currently modelling in 00 or HO gauge and looking to move up, unsure on the size and scales of G-scale or 16mm, and how that looks in the garden environment. Obviously best remembered that in this case the diesel locomotive is a standard gauge model, and the steam locomotive is actually a narrow gauge model. So if we'd been showing the same model in both scales, the diesel would be substantially larger than the steam locomotive is on the G-scale track.